Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Kelly France, recovery coach, among many, many other talents. Kelly, how are you today?
Matt, I'm doing just great. Thanks. Great to see you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I know we've been having a little bit of back and forth on Instagram there. We're both in the same line of work, both Canadians. You're out in Toronto as well as my
Yeah.
previous guest we were just talking about too. So very cool. Always cool to talk to a fellow Canadian, and as well as somebody that's also, providing the same services, or similar services. Really cool. So let's start with there. I want to get into, how long have you been doing, recovery sobriety coaching for? And yeah, what do you have going on right now? Is it like group coaching, one-on-one, a hybrid of both? Yeah, tell us about what you got going on, please.
All right. Well, thanks again, Matt.
Yeah.
For as far as recovery coaching, I guess I've been active since January 2021, so just a little over 2 years for myself. And I've sort of designed I didn't do much research, to be honest with you, on recovery coaching before I decided I wanted to get into it. And what I'm doing right now is filling sort of a void that I saw when I'm in recovery myself. Right? I'm a 12-step guy, fully support the 12 steps and meetings and all that stuff, and I think they're great. What I noticed is that I saw a massive gap in the recovery system, and not so much the system, but the people in recovery. That when people get sober, and I include myself in this, people get sober and they get their feet wet in meetings, and they make some new friends, and often we just get stagnant, and there's
Mhm.
nothing in recovery that says, okay, now that you're sober, let's get you on fire about life. What do you want to do next? And I saw so many people go back out because they just got bored. They started settling for an average or just below average life. And I thought to myself, man, what a great opportunity for someone to step in and help people say, okay, listen, dude, you've done or sister, you've done the impossible. You somehow managed to get sober. You pretty much don't have anything that can stop you from having one of the greatest lives that you could imagine. So that's where
Mm.
I love to step in with people and use the techniques that I've learned to take them from where they are in sobriety to where they want to be in the future. So that's where my business is at. I
Yeah.
personally, I prefer group coaching, and I prefer coaching people who are fresh out of treatment or are currently in sober living.
Very cool. What is it
Yeah,
about
thanks.
the group coaching that you like the most? Like, what is it, just the synergy between the folks and the different spectrums of where people are? Yeah, what is it about the group coaching that you like the most?
Well, there's a couple things actually. First off, I love leading a group. That's just something that I've always enjoyed. I like leading a group. I like being in front of people. And second of all, when I've done it before, I've been involved in groups and I've also led groups. There's so much more opportunity to help each other and throw around ideas than there is to if it's just one-on-one. If it's just one-on-one, it's me and it's you and it's our ideas, and which is awesome, which is great, and we come up with some great solutions. But I find that in a group, it's just there's so much more opportunity for a discussion, for other people to share ideas that have worked for them as well.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great answer for sure.
What about you? Are you I don't want to interview you here, but what is that?
Yeah.
What is your um sort of current format of what you're doing?
Yeah, so I like a hybrid, you know what I mean? So I like, yeah, my program, like I love the group though, and that's why I asked. I was curious to see what your, take or perspective was on it. So groups is what saved my life. Like AA, my first AA meeting that I went to literally saved my life, and I
Okay.
will not forget that, and the reason for that was just like getting into a room of like-minded people, just the energy, you know what I mean? I didn't It was like I was a minute in to my first meeting, and just the weight, like a physical weight, felt like it came
Uh,
off my shoulders. I started tearing up, and I was like, okay, the need for this persona or this like ego that I had just melted away. And so I know that how powerful it is to hear, my story and somebody else's story or vice versa, and be with somebody that can be super not only know like what you're going through, but has gone through something similar, and you can, yeah,
Yep.
to your point, compare notes. There is something is like having that mastermind sort of idea that works so well in business. I think
Yep.
also works so well in sobriety as well. To your point, right?
Mhm.
There's so many different ways to do things, so many different perspectives, and I know for me sometimes it could get a little tunnel vision, and if I have somebody that goes, well, just look off the beaten path a little bit, and there's this that could work for you. But oh, I never would have seen that. Thank you. Just
Right.
that sort of idea, and a team thing as well too, right? Yeah, absolutely, man. There's so much to be said for that, for sure.
Yeah, and I've heard a great saying that says, you can't read the label from inside the jar, right? So
Yes,
I need other
love that.
people to sort of say, "Hey,
Yeah,
Kelly, what are you doing over there?" And
yeah,
we help each other with stuff like that. I think it's great.
yeah.
Plus, accountability is
Yes,
me being accountable to myself doesn't it works to an extent, a very small extent, but when I have social accountability with other humans that I'm
yeah,
that I'm having to report to,
yeah.
game changer.
100%, man. I think a lot of people are willing to invest, if nothing else, in just accountability, right? I mean, the
Yep.
idea of like a personal trainer or having an accountability buddy to go into the gym, you're a lot less likely to not go to the gym if you are going to disappoint somebody else aside from yourself. It's easy enough to get in your own head and do well, I've worked hard, I can give myself a day off, and we all know where that can lead, right? And then having somebody waiting there for you, though, it's like you say, the social responsibility aspect is like a whole different level of just self-commitment and everything that comes from that, isn't it?
It certainly is. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's cool. That's great. I want to get a little bit into some of your techniques that you've been using. As far as I love, by the way, from the people I've interviewed, there hasn't been somebody that's been very specific about that gap between, I would say it's like, correct me if I'm wrong or how you word it. It's sort of like an aftercare. Like there's
Yeah.
like you call it about the pink cloud. There's that initial like triage of let's get that substance or the drink out of your hand. And then it's kind of like, okay, so what next? And honestly, that's what the theme in this podcast is, to a degree, beyond recovery. So there's recovery,
Awesome. Yeah.
and then what are going to be those next steps? And as you mentioned, I love that phrase, set your life on fire, right? Like what are going to be the things? And honestly, again, this isn't about me, but like part of my story was that I was getting, I would say, complacent, or just my ego was starting to get to the stage where I was like, you know what? I think you've done enough self-work and self-development. Certainly you're cured, you're good to go, right? Whereas if I'd continued on a path of growth mindset, I certainly would have, wouldn't have had the relapse that I did. So yeah,
Mm.
what are some of your techniques as far as what's worked for you that you then use with your groups, as far as like really identifying what, like, what are tens for you, or what sets your life on fire?
Okay. Yeah. Well, awesome, man. Thanks. So for me, obviously there's not just one technique I use, but what I love to base my courses on and my coaching on is a lot of psychology and science. So for me, it's something that I have really subscribed to in the past few years, and it has really, really improved my life, is the future self science. Whereas
Mm,
if I don't see myself doing something specific in the future, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing today in order to
mm,
achieve that, right? So it's kind
yeah.
of like if I don't have a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, whatever the goal is, today lacks a lot of hope, meaning, and as a person, I lack confidence. And so that is
Mm,
something that I've learned by taking courses myself. There's an amazing psychologist. His name's Benjamin Hardy. I'm not sure if you've heard of him,
mm,
but he's just such a really he's a really cool dude, and I'd love for you and anyone else who's watching to check him out.
I will.
But he's an organizational psychologist, and he bases his books and his work on you know a lot more than this, but the future self science, where the easiest way and the maybe the only way to create hope in my present is to have something optimistic, something clear and actionable that I'm working toward, right? So that is what, I have a 12-week course called Life Beyond Sobriety, and we have 12
Mm,
weeks and 12 modules, and they're all based around identifying where I want to go, tackling the limiting beliefs that have been plaguing me for the last however many years of my life,
mm,
applying the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, saying, okay, if I want this big 3, 5, 10 year goal to happen, what what is the 80% of my life that I have to absolutely do away with and what is the 20% that I need to laser focus on for this to
Mm.
become reality? So that, and quite honestly, Matt, it really doesn't have a ton to do with staying sober, except, I call it the best form of relapse prevention, because hope and excitement in my future, in my experience, is the best kind of relapse prevention, right?
Yeah.
I have the experience in addiction recovery, of course, and I offer that as well. But a lot of these are just techniques, psychological techniques that work. Like we design our environment,
Mm.
we add
Hmm.
forcing functions into our lives that make the outcome that we're looking for the only outcome that's possible, because we've removed, lesser goals, things like that. And
Yeah, I love that, man. There's a lot of great yeah, techniques there. I want to sort of unpack and riff on a little bit with you there.
sure,
One of the things that stands out to me, I love that idea is it's not so much to do about just staying sober. It's about, it's like focusing the brain on the other things, the things that make you excitement. And then the byproduct of that, of course, is of course you're going to remain sober because you're so excited and invested
sure.
in this compelling future that you're creating or co-creating. Which is really cool because like some of the work that or just some of the research even that I've done as well is like, the brain being like the reticular activating system, like the whole brain being like a Google search engine. If you type in, don't think of the pink elephant, you're going to start thinking. So if you're just constantly thinking about what you can't do and sobriety and
Right.
stay sober and don't drink, that's where your brain is going to search for, it brings up articles and memories of the past and such, whereas you very future focused, you create this compelling future. That's where your brain is going to be bringing up these, and that's where your energy is going to go and such as well. So really like that. The 80-20 rule
Yeah.
is like one of these things that keeps cycling back in. I love the idea. And it's like, it's one of these, I think it's like the universe is tapping me on the shoulder. I'm definitely going to dive a little bit more into that. So
Sure.
really cool that you brought that up as well. Yeah. Well, what is it? Let's riff on the 80-20 a little bit. Like what are you saying? So like, how would somebody know? How did you know when it was like the 80%? Like, is it intuitive? Is it like through a meditation? Is it through like a itinerary you write out in your journaling? How do you come across what's the 20% that you really need to focus on? And then, if something's sort of on the fence, if it's 80, like, how do you know?
Okay. Wait, listen, great question. And, all of those things that you mentioned, as far as, meditation, journaling, and definitely all so helpful when it comes to identifying what I need to stop doing and what I need to do more of. However, the most important thing to identifying what I am currently wasting my time
Mm,
doing
mhm,
is to clearly identify where I want to go.
mm,
Because, of course, if I don't know where I want to go, I don't know what I'm wasting my time doing, or I don't know what's bringing me closer to something, because I don't know what that something is. So honestly, if you have a goal, or if anyone has a goal that says, okay, I want to start a business, and I want to be a recovery coach, and I want to be able to serve 15 new clients a month, and I want to serve them in this space, right? So, and I get as absolutely specific as I possibly can, and then I look at my day and say, okay, what needs to be true
mm,
for this goal to be my reality? And I write down a bunch of things. Okay, I would have to do this. I would have to reach out to 15, 20 people a day. I would have to start cold calling treatment centers. Okay, amazing. So now we have a list of things that are going to help us get closer to this big goal. Now I look what's not on that list. I don't see on that list, I don't see scrolling social media for 4 hours a day. I don't see, you know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, I don't
yeah,
see, I'm trying to think of some of the things that I waste my time with, because I still do. I'm not, hell, I'm not perfect at all, right? That, I don't necessarily need to listen to 2 hours of true crime podcasts every day, because that doesn't seem to be getting me closer to my goal of serving 15 people per month, right? So
sure,
it
sure.
becomes painfully clear what I'm wasting my time with, what that 80% is. And once I realize that, and and make some pretty, courageous and drastic changes, saying, I'm going to remove this app from my phone, or I'm going
Mm,
to, stuff like that, again,
yeah.
is a forcing function. So that makes it almost impossible for me to check social media, throw on a podcast instead of listening to a nice audiobook that's going to maybe educate me.
Mm,
It makes those 80% of things very clear. And then now I'm left with a lot of time that I can take that 20% and say, okay, how do I get more of this in my schedule? How do I make my I 20% more effective? And that goes for anything,
Yeah.
business, health, relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
Yeah,
that. I love that. I guess for me, there's like, and I'm sure there's part of my like inner dialogue. It's sort of the addict part of my brain that still comes up and is able to justify certain behaviors for myself. So I'll give an
sure.
example for myself. So I have certain, like the equivalent of your true crime podcasts. I have certain what I call like sort of junk food, which I've minimized. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I find that it's like it still balances me in some sense. Or again, perhaps my pattern says that it's, you know what I mean, whether it's truly me or not. I just haven't been able to identify that quite yet. So just having this idea that like, there is a time and place to be able to kick back and enjoy something that perhaps is viewed as an indulgence that isn't necessarily in that 20%, or let's face it, it is not. I'll be as less ambiguous as I can be here. It is not part of the 20%. However, there is part of me that says it's contributing to that because it's the way that I unwind or whatnot. Yeah, is it like, how disciplined do you view that you personally have to be with that sort of thing, and how disciplined do you then recommend like your clients to be, for example?
Yeah, okay. For first of all, thanks for sharing about the junk food because I also struggle with that, and that's a great. I can answer your question by sort of referring to that in my life.
Cool. Yeah.
I never really cared about sugar until I got sober.
Mm.
All right, and so
Yeah.
once I got sober, I started loving sugar, ice cream, cookies, all that stuff. At a certain point, it was mind you, I exercised a lot. So it wasn't like I was putting on weight or anything, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't mean I'm not getting unhealthy, right? It doesn't mean
Right.
I'm not cultivating a nice battleground for a diabetes war or something like
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? By eating all
Right.
that garbage. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I've learned is that since sugar is definitely part of my 80% refined sugar I'm talking about
Mhm.
here,
Mhm.
I needed to eliminate that 100% from my diet.
Mhm.
So only because, and a huge part of that for me, and I'm not saying that about every 80% item. Specifically, I'm talking about sugar. For me, I can't moderate it. It doesn't seem. I've
Right.
tried.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so once I made that decision, I don't have to make that decision again. I don't have to think of myself, well, that's my birthday. I'm going to have cake. I can't really say no to cake, or it's
Yeah.
Christmas and there's cook.
Sure.
Once that decision is made, I don't need to make that decision again. So there's no question in my brain what my decision is going to be next time I'm faced with that. It's just something that's done. So in a case like that where it's something I want to give up and there's absolutely no benefit to me acting that way or taking partaking in that behavior anymore, I will give it up
Mm.
because
Mhm.
doing making that decision 100% is a lot easier than making a decision, 98%.
It is. Yeah.
Totally is. That's my
Yeah.
experience anyway. When it comes to things like, social media, binge watching TV, I mean, look, people, I'm not gonna tell my clients you can never watch TV again or you can never go on Instagram again. That's just no, but
Sure.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Remove it from your phone if you can, or
Yeah.
move your TV out of your bedroom for the love of God. And again, I shouldn't say it that way because I'm not judging anyone who has a TV in their bedroom because that
Sure.
people do, right? And that's fine. But make your environment a little more future self friendly than
Mm.
former self friendly.
Ooh, I like that. That is a great
Yeah.
summary right there. Future self friendly. How about with somebody that is, yeah, how to word this? So I know a lot of folks, and myself included to a degree, like anxiety for me is like from future tripping essentially, right? Like worrying about the future. My brain definitely goes into uh fabrications of potential things that could go wrong, right? I think that's just, I'm realizing that I have this awareness now. That's the brain is, it's trying to keep me safe, right? It's combining memories of things that have happened to me in my past that have been unpleasure, like maybe uncomfortable, for example, and then forecasting that in the future and then reflects back into this like anxiety sort of
Mhm.
state. So I'm wondering, yeah, how does you manage somebody like that perhaps has so much anxiety from the future and you're working on them specifically about a future self, I imagine there is a degree of like resistance and this whole other layer that you have to penetrate before you can actually do that work with that person. Is that correct? Am I assuming that?
Definitely sometimes. And I find that, so let's just say, Matt, you have this amazing vision of your future, but it's 5 years out or 10 years out, right? But you've
Mm,
got these amazing, but okay, there's a lot of time between now and then
mhm.
to, achieve your goal, which might cause you some anxiety, questioning yourself. Did I make the right decision? Can I actually do this? Is this, do I really want to wait this long? And,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and one of the great techniques that I've learned is to have daily, daily wins, right?
Mm, mhm,
And
mhm,
so with all of my clients, one of the mandatory things that we do is that first off, they get an accountability partner. That's number one.
mhm.
Not me, but someone, a friend of theirs, someone who's going to be able to be accountable with them, not just to hear their stuff, but also to be, you swap accountability. And
Yeah.
so what we
Yeah.
do is every night, I'm going to say, you're my accountability partner. Okay. So I'm going to send you a text message at night and I'm going to say, Matt, here are all my wins for the day, whether or not they're related to my achieving my goals in my future. But here's all the good stuff that happened to me all day long. Okay. Now here's 1 to 3 important things that I'm going to achieve tomorrow as soon as I can, right? And these 1 to 3
Mm,
important things are going to be directly linked to me achieving my future goals.
mhm.
So I write nothing. I don't have it. It's not a to-do list. I don't write, go get my hair cut
Yeah.
on this list because it's,
Yeah.
shit like that. We're gonna do it anyway. And I'm sure you've heard about the argument between the important and the urgent, right? The urgent
Right.
will always take care of it. They'll always get done. So these are
Mhm,
the important things that don't necessarily have to get done,
mm.
but they're going to be wins that are going to lead me to become the person that I want to be in the future. So
Yeah.
doing things on a daily basis really
Mm,
cuts down on the anxiety. And when I do stuff, before 8 a.m., for example, that, having those wins in early,
mhm.
um, I can't remember ever, getting up nice and early, working for a few hours on my future, and then feeling anxiety afterwards.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
later on in the day, at night, I believe me, I've been in bed at night with nothing else to do except for try to go to sleep. Yeah, sure. Anxiety creeps up on me, right?
Mhm.
It happens, but it's a lot less than it used to be, and it's because taking small chunks out of my big goals every day,
Mm.
and it really helps with that. And also, measuring backward, right? Not saying shit, I haven't reached these goals yet, but ever in doubt, grab a pen or grab your journal, write down all your wins for the past 30 days. And no matter where you are, there is going to be a lot of them, right? And that's a great exercise I use with people as well
Very
to,
cool.
to, to curb the anxiety.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so is it and such a parallel, being in alignment with recovery, right? Like the one moment at a time, one day at a time. It's taking a similar approach that is already, already been so effective, presumably for everybody else that's been,
Sure.
been working with that. So just adding to that, I love that. Finding that like early mornings are a big part of recovery, sobriety, and just high performing, really.
Yeah.
For myself, mornings were my most dreaded time of day that are now my absolute favorite time of day, right? So I imagine it'll be kind of similar for you by the sounds of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, very cool. I could do a whole episode on, like coaching and theory, but I really want to hear more about your story, your origin story, your relationship with alcohol, how it developed, how your drinking career turned out and what got you into what you're doing now. And then we'll come back to the coaching aspect towards the end here, but I'd love to hear more about you and yeah, what made you who you are today?
Oh, okay. Well, thanks, man. And I had a thought this week. Actually, I turned 50 on Monday,
Oh,
and
happy
that's a
birthday.
thanks, man. A huge
Yeah,
milestone for me. Of course, then I realized,
yeah,
geez, I spent the decade of my 40s sober. I was pretty proud about that. When I
it's
thought about
amazing.
that, I never spent a decade sober before.
Hell
But
yeah, that's a big
for
win, man. That's
yeah,
awesome.
man.
Yes.
Thanks. And for me, alcoholic drinking started back in high school, right? When I was 14 years old, I found alcohol, right? I was an overweight kid in high school. I'm short, I'm about 5'5", right? So I got asthma. I had all these excuses, right? Here's why I'm different than anyone else. And as soon as I started medicating with alcohol, man, and I'm sure you can relate that. Just so a weight was lifted off. Like that's just how it made me feel. So my life was put on hold for about 25 years while I drank alcoholically, right? And I lost the power. I lost the power of choice probably in my mid 20s. I don't know, but when I at a certain point when I started drinking, I couldn't control it. I could very rarely stop. And it caused me to stop growing emotionally. It caused me to never know how to manage money, know how to manage a relationship. It's just ripped away all my confidence. If I ever had confidence, it was absolutely shot. I just felt I had no self-esteem, and
Mm.
that's where alcohol brought me. And then I continued to drink alcoholically, but I found cocaine and I found crack when I was in my early 30s, and that just took it to a whole different level from alcohol and the depressant to bringing me up with the stimulant. Was just I'm like, oh, this is what I was looking for. And you know, back in I guess 2006 it was, I had been using the drugs for you know several years at this point. My life was teetering on disaster for a long time. Inside, I was done. I mean, I was done. And maybe you can relate to that too. And I was just so miserable. I was so sad. I used to think it was depression, which I guess you could use that word, but I'm not a clinically depressed person. What I was suffering from was the results of the way I was living my life and this, untreated addiction that I had, right? I know some people are clinically depressed. I'm just don't happen to be one of them.
Yeah.
Um, and so around 2006, I came to a point where I couldn't borrow any more money. My work life, I was in sales at the time. I had a great
Mm.
job at a uh, computer company. Let's just say that to
Yeah.
simplify it.
Yeah.
And but I couldn't see a way out of the problem and the big giant hole that I dug for myself. So I had a plan to kill myself. And I did what I could, and I bought all the drugs that I could with the money I could borrow. I remember I forgot I had a Best Buy credit card that I hadn't used in a while, so I went and bought a couple of iPods back. That's just how long ago we're talking about when
Yeah.
iPods were still for sale. Bought
Yeah.
them, went next door to the pawn shop, sold them for cash, and then went and bought as much as I could, and then decided, I was sitting by the Don River here in Toronto with a knife and all that I had, and I cut my hand to make sure that the knife was sharp enough, and I was going to commit suicide that night.
Yeah.
And luckily I didn't cut my wrists. What I ended up doing, and I knew my friends were looking for me because I disappeared. My family was looking for me.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, whatever happened, I phoned my friend and I said, "Hey man, can I?" And this guy is my buddy Alex, who he lives in Las Vegas now. But he was always such an amazing supporter of me as well as my family. I mean, my family was always first, of course, and they never gave up on me, thank God. Um, to them, because I don't think I'd be here without them. But I phoned Alex and I said, "Hey man, can I come over?" I forget how the conversation went. It was a while ago, and went over there. And I remember he sat me down and we made it a list of here's why I have to stop. Here's why I don't want to do this anymore. And I was off to detox that day. Went
Mm.
to a 21-day residential treatment center right after that. And that was 2006, and it was amazing. And I went to a great treatment center. They did everything they could for me in 21 days. I was introduced to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Mm.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
But still, I didn't realize, I still didn't realize what I was up against. I just thought at that point an honest desire to stop was all I needed. That's what I truly believed in.
Right.
And I had one. Of course I wanted to stop. I didn't want my life to, I was either going to get killed, kill myself, or end up in prison. And I did not, I did not want that. But it wasn't enough. So it took me another, I guess, 5 years after, maybe 4.5 years after that,
Mm.
before I
Mhm.
finally got sober. And in between that, I was, two more treatment centers. I was homeless, um, in Kitchener, Ontario for a several month stretch where I had
Mm.
nowhere to go. And a small part of me said, "Hey, this isn't so bad. I have no responsibilities." Of course, I lost my job at this point, right?
Right.
Um, but something inside me said, "Okay, let's just try this once more. go to one more treatment center. And so I did back in 2008. Learned, it was a 6-month treatment center. I wasn't kicked out of this one because I was kicked out of the one before because I was arrested for a robbery while I was in the treatment center, which is just, not the, it's not the, it was not the same guy as you're talking to today,
Yeah.
just night and day difference, right?
Right.
And nonetheless, the Salvation Army took me into one of their amazing treatment centers here in Ontario. Had about a year and a half sobriety after that, moved back in with the family. Didn't stay sober for the whole time, but it was one of those things where when I finally did get sober after a couple more relapses, I'd finally had enough. I hadn't hit my as low a bottom as I'd hit before. I still had money in the bank. I had a car. I had a job.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, Matt, but something just said, "Hey, all right, Kelly, it's decision time because you've tried everything on your own and that's not working." I was going to meetings and stuff at the time, right?
Mm.
But I wasn't doing everything that was asked of me. I certainly didn't have a nice rosy view of my future. I'd never thought about goals. All I thought about was what was right in front of me. And that's something that's really changed my recovery is to actually think beyond, tomorrow, next week, next year. What do you want to do, man? You've been offered this amazing gift. So what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so that was back, it was August 2011. And since then, I've maintained my sobriety by doing, obviously going to a bunch of meetings, being a sponsor,
Hmm.
listening to people, being open to ideas. And, one of the things that's really changed me is I hated the way I looked. I was
Mm.
overweight. I was about 30 pounds heavier than I was now. So I made a decision that my whole life that caused me massive self-esteem issues. So I decided to get active and get fit. So I managed to lose 30 pounds, change my eating, and start taking up exercise. And that's something that really, really helped me out as well. Cause I don't think I would be sober if I still had that terrible, identity as I had back then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Man,
man.
thanks so much for sharing all of that. That's like
Sure.
incredible story. And, I think that's, yeah, it's just so important for us to, be open about our stories, I think, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's just, it's
Yeah.
such a, for me, there was such an accumulation of shame and sadness and just disconnect that was accumulating from not feeling like I could be truthful about who I was and what I'd been through. So, for somebody, that's why I just love recovery people, right? It's like,
Mhm.
there's this, as soon as you start telling the story, it's like that persona or whatnot that protects is just like, it's gone. You know what I mean? And it's just like sharing what you've been through. And that, I'm sure that's just, that was like a micro dose, if you will, of what you'd been through. Right. So
Sure.
yeah, thank you for sharing.
My
Yeah,
pleasure.
I can imagine you really, brought it together at the end there, mentioning about like it was foreign to you to think about too much about the future. It was like very much you were in the moment, so to speak, or being reactionary. I would think more so than more, because like
Right.
in the moment can be very that's like a goal for a lot of people, is be more present. That's a big thing with like meditation, journaling, is other things that we're talking about. uh but you're also combining that with this idea of like the future self,
Mm.
and yes, which is really cool. So I love that really gives an origin story about like why you chose or where you gravitated towards the tools that you use for your coaching as well within your own
Mhm.
story, which is really cool. So
Sure.
yeah, I'm curious about like the 12 weeks thing. What is it about the 12-week program that you find to be a sweet spot? Is that, so I'm thinking that's about 4 months in, so that's about 120 days ish. What about is that there can be that transformation with somebody? Because you hear like the what is it, the 21-90 rule, like somewhere it's like 21 days to begin or like disconnect from a less than desirable habit, 90 days for it to set, anywhere from 66 to 90, somewhere in there. And then you're saying there's like this fourth month, which I imagine is sort of like that aftercare that like really establish that new pattern. Like what was it about the 12 weeks for your program that you settled on for that?
Well, I'll say first, it's 3 months, so it's not four.
Oh,
It's
okay.
yeah. So it's 90 days. 12 weeks
Oh,
is
my bad. Yeah, yeah.
is
Bad
around that. No,
math.
that's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
That's all right. And I'm telling you, there's no other reason behind that than I thought it was a good length. But when one of the things I've done when starting my business. Of course I invested in a bunch of courses, and one was a digital marketing course, and she did a 12-week course. It was group coaching every week with homework to do and videos and all sorts of stuff. And I basically based my course on that because I thought it was a good length for me. I
Mm.
enjoyed it. I enjoyed the way she delivered the content, and that's why I decided on that. Really, it was one of those things where, like, why would I need to reinvent the wheel? I think this seems to be a good length. I'll let the people decide, and that's why I went with the 12 weeks. Nothing psychological about that at all.
Interesting. Yeah, that's
It was
cool. And
just
if it's
easier.
hey, and if it's been working, well,
Yeah.
why look elsewhere? So really cool. Yeah, and I guess just for the rest of 2023 here, what do you have going on? Just keeping on. Do you have
Yeah.
yeah, I'd be interested to see, or like big future goal setting individual. Yeah, what do you have on the docket for this year?
Well, thanks, man. I'm in a great course right now. It's a 6-week exponential psychology accelerator course, right? So it's about 10xing yourself. And then in
Nice.
2023, so I'm putting myself under a lot of pressure. A couple of things I have coming up. I've become a runner since I've been in recovery. So I have a few races coming up. And for me, that's something that, I used to smoke cigarettes a pack a day, obviously, back in the day and stuff,
Yeah.
to be able to run marathons now, and ultra marathons as well is just one of the
Wow.
coolest things I ever get to experience. And so I love New York City. I spent 5 months last year in New York City, which was just one of those future goals that I'm like, hey, I really want to move there. Let's
Cool.
go there for as long as I can. So
Yeah.
I'm going back there this year. So I'll run the Long Island Marathon
Very
May
cool.
7th and the Brooklyn Half Marathon on May 20th. So I'm currently training for those,
Nice.
and there will be a fall race. I don't know where that's going to be yet. I hope it's at least international, and by international I mean outside of Canada, but it might be here in Canada as well. I've run a
Yeah.
bunch of races in Canada as well.
Very cool.
But so yeah, Long Island and then Brooklyn, we're doing that. As far as my business is concerned, I will work with, I guess, people who meet my criteria. So if I have an individual who reaches out to me and says, here's where I'm at and I'd like some help, absolutely. But for me, the focus is more on on treatment centers, because I really see my value and the value of the material that I deliver to people fresh out of treatment, or in sober living, or whatever the case is. So my 2023 is based around, um, co- you know, I guess reaching as many people as I can through treatment centers to help them hit the ground running once they finish their program, whatever that program looks like for them. So that's where I'm going business wise, um, for that, and personal as well. I don't know. I wish I had my list of stuff I'm supposed to be
Yeah.
doing this year in front of me. But
Right.
that's it, maintain my health, and I
Mm.
just did something like I want to be healthier because I want to my goal is to get down to a 3 hour, 10-minute marathon. And for me, I have no problem running the distances. But for me, it's the nutrition that I have to work on. So I was able
Okay.
to, well, I cut a morning handful of cheese out of my diet a couple weeks ago, and I realized that I'm saving myself about 35 pounds of cheese every year. So I'm going to
Whoa.
continue. I know it's ridiculous, a compound effect of just putting a handful
Right.
of cheese in the egg whites every
Wow.
morning. Yes,
Yeah, that's
you know,
unreal. Yeah,
yeah,
crazy,
a brick
crazy.
a week, man. Forget about it.
Yeah, I guess,
And
right? Yeah.
yeah,
That
it's
is so funny,
ridiculous.
right? That's one of the topics we've been talking about too, like these little, whether it's little wins or in this case, a little
Yep,
bit of cheese, what it accumulates to at the end of a year or 5 years, right? Is
definitely,
like,
man.
yeah. So keeping that in mind as well, in on the flip side of things, right? Where like, oh, it's only this, it's only a candy bar. Think about how
Yeah,
many of those, the only a candy bar you have by the end of the year and so forth. Yeah. So yeah, that's some great insight. I love that, dude. Congratulations on all your like, dude, ultra marathon. Is that one of these ones that's like 120 kilometers? Like one of these?
well, I mean, I guess the definition of an ultra marathon is anything
Yeah.
over a marathon distance. So
Oh,
for
okay.
myself, I've done the 50 miler, which is 80 kilometers.
Wow.
And that's the longest one I've done.
Wow.
But yeah, I'll get up to 100K or maybe 100 miles, and definitely that's in the future. Not this year, but
Yeah.
definitely that's probably something that I'm gonna just sign up for. And
Wow.
That's how I got into my first half marathon. My friend,
Yeah.
she said, "Look, just sign up for it."
Yeah,
And I did, right? And I financially committed, and I committed to her, and that was it. I
that
owe
was it.
her such a huge debt for
Yeah.
just saying, "Kelly, just get off your ass and sign up for it," right? And I did that back in, it was 2015 or something like that. And
And then
so
here
that's what
we
I'll do with
are.
the ultra
Yeah.
races as well. Yeah, man.
Yeah. So good, like 8 years of doing this running then by the
Yeah.
sounds of it. And yeah, and then coming up on, so you said, was it 2011? August 2011 was your
Yeah.
official sobriety. So congratulations again.
Thanks,
Happy
man.
birthday. Well, yeah, catching you at a really cool time here as far as just like the timing of everything for you, your business, your time of life. So very, very cool. I'm very glad that you came on the show today with great conversations. Now I always say, like, towards the end of the conversation, now that the audience gets to know you, we get to know each other. Very easy to, go into like a part 2 on a specific topic, right? So there's tons of things that we've unpacked today that I could definitely do a deeper dive into. Specifically, I really like some of these ideas of, like, the coaching styles and, methods and modalities that you use. So I'd love to have you back on, sometime down the road for sure.
Hey, that'd be great, man. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. And final question for you today, Kelly. If somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the easiest way to find you online?
It's my full name.com. So it's kellyfrance.com.
Beautiful. Nice
And
and
you can
east.
find absolutely, man.
Yeah.
You can find all the social media. You get a phone number on there as well. You can reach us. So yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I like how you do that, by the way, on your Instagram. You have the phone number on your reels and such. I'm like, that's cool, man. There's not a whole lot of folks that would do that. And I think it's so important in the line of work that we have, that is just have that availability, for
Mhm.
people. It's because you can't necessarily plan when those cravings hit, or when you're about to have a relapse or whatnot. Those they sort of come up, don't they? Especially when you are in that early sobriety, right? So I think that's really
Sure.
cool that you do that.
Well, thanks, man. Thank you.
Awesome, brother. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and yes, we'll keep in touch. And yeah, let's get a part 2 in the books here for later on this year.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. Nice to have a chat with you.